Have you ever walked into a room full of family or old friends and felt something shift? A glance that lingers too long, a comment wrapped in sugar but sharp underneath, or maybe nothing at all. Just silence. Like you've become invisible, even though you're standing right there. It's a strange feeling, isn't it? You've lived a life full of effort, raising children, working hard, sacrificing, staying kind when it wasn't easy. You've earned your place in the world. So why now? Does it sometimes feel like people treat you as if you're a burden, or worse, as if you've become irrelevant? Let's be honest. Getting older comes with plenty of gifts, wisdom, perspective, freedom, but it also comes with moments that sting. One of the hardest to admit is this: sometimes people start resenting you. Not because of something terrible you've done, but simply because you're still here, still standing, still being yourself. In this video, we're going to gently unwrap something that's rarely spoken about out loud. Why people, yes, even the ones close to you, may secretly feel bitterness, discomfort, even hostility towards you as you grow older. And more importantly, how you can rise above it with grace, strength, and clarity. Because understanding this isn't about blame, it's about peace. Yours. Let me start by saying this. If you've ever felt like someone was annoyed with your presence, even though you did nothing wrong, you're not imagining things. One of the biggest hidden reasons behind this reaction is envy. Yes, envy. People often assume envy is only about money or status, but it runs much deeper than that. Sometimes your calm presence reminds others of the chaos they still carry. Your wisdom shines a light on the parts of their lives they haven't figured out. Your stable marriage, your resilience, your ability to sit with silence, all of that, believe it or not, can make someone else uncomfortable. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you reflect something they don't yet have or fear they never will. Think of it this way. If you've built a peaceful life, emotionally, financially, spiritually, that's a result of years of effort. Decades of weathering storms, growing, adjusting, learning. But when someone who hasn't done that sees you now, they don't see the journey. They only see the result. And instead of being inspired, they feel inadequate. That inadequacy can twist into envy. And envy, when left unspoken, turns into resentment. That resentment, my friend, isn't yours to carry. It's not your job to shrink so others can feel bigger. You do not owe anyone an apology for the joy you've earned. But still it hurts when it comes from someone you love. Maybe it's a daughter who snaps at you for giving advice, a friend who starts avoiding your calls, a neighbor who used to be friendly but now seems distant. And the most confusing part is, you don't know why. Now you do. It's not about you. It's about what your presence reflects in their mirror. And knowing that gives you back some power. Because you don't need to change who you are to ease their discomfort. You need only stay kind, stay steady, and let their emotions be theirs to manage. Another quiet reason people may pull away, or even act cold, is communication. The way you talk, the way you share your thoughts, your tone, your stories, they were shaped in a different time. A time when honesty was valued more than sensitivity. When telling the truth, even if it hurt, was seen as care, not cruelty. But today, the world has changed. Words are softer, emotions are more fragile, and bluntness is often mistaken for judgment. That's hard to navigate, especially when all you want to do is help. You might say, "I just don't think that's a smart choice." And your grandchild hears, "You think I'm stupid." You might offer advice that took you a lifetime to understand, and they respond with a wall of silence, or worse, they roll their eyes. It's painful. You try to connect, but it feels like you're speaking two different languages. And in some ways you are. You're speaking from lived experience. They're listening through the filter of social media, speed, and emotional overwhelm. That disconnect isn't your fault, but it can make you feel like a stranger in your own family. You start doubting yourself. Should I have said that? Maybe I'm too harsh. Maybe I just don't understand them anymore. But here's the thing. Don't let their misinterpretation make you question your heart. Your intention matters. And while yes, we all can learn to express ourselves with more curiosity, more softness, more patience, don't let their discomfort erase the wisdom you bring to the table. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is ask. Ask them how they see things. Ask them what they need, not so we can fix them, but so we can understand. It's a bridge, a way back. And it begins not with defending your values, but by sharing your story. Because when people hear where you've come from, they start to see not just what you believe, but why you believe it. Still, there's one more reason I want to talk about today. And it's a hard one. It's the sting of being seen not as you are, but as the age you are. People make assumptions. They assume you're stuck in your ways. They assume you're too slow, too outdated, too rigid to change. And even when you've grown, even when you're open, even when you're more emotionally available than you've ever been, they still only see the gray hair, the wrinkles, the slower step. It's not fair. It's frustrating. And worst of all, it makes you feel unseen. But let me tell you something powerful. No one gets to define you by a number. You are not your age. You are your experiences, your laughter, your quiet courage, your stories. You are every day you got back up when life tried to knock you down. So when someone treats you like you're too old to matter, don't absorb that message. Deflect it with your strength. Respond with your presence. Because your presence, your fully alive, authentic, seasoned presence, is your greatest rebellion. And it is beautiful. Sometimes it's not just envy or misunderstanding that creates distance between us and others as we grow older. It's something quieter, more subtle, misaligned values. You see, the world you grew up in, the one that shaped your beliefs, your routines, your definition of right and wrong, that world isn't the same one younger generations are living in now. And because of that, your values might feel like they no longer fit. Not in conversations, not in family decisions, not even in your own home. You might believe in hard work, routine, and doing what needs to be done even when you don't feel like it. But when you mention these things, they might look at you like you've said something completely foreign. To them, rest is productive. Feelings take priority. Tradition? That's something to question, not honor. And you're left wondering, am I outdated? Am I the problem? But here's the truth. Your values were born out of the life you lived. They were forged in times that demanded resilience. They helped you survive, thrive, raise families, build careers. They are not wrong. They are your foundation. And just because they're not trendy doesn't mean they're not true. Still, it's painful when those values get brushed aside, or worse, criticized. When you talk about family unity and someone accuses you of being controlling. When you express your faith and someone calls it superstition. When you talk about sacrifice and someone labels it weakness. It hurts. Because it's not just your opinion that's being dismissed, it's your identity. But take heart. You don't need to defend your beliefs like a soldier in a war. You only need to explain them like a human with a story. Share where those beliefs come from. Let people see the why behind the what. Because stories connect. Stories open doors. And sometimes all it takes is a story to remind someone that values are not just rules. They're reflections of love, of lessons learned the hard way. And while you're walking through these conversations, there's another silent force that can come in and twist the blade a little deeper. Gossip. Yes, gossip. Those whispered judgments. the half-truths shared behind your back, even within your own family or circle of friends. It's shocking, isn't it? How even in the later years of life, when we should be building peace and connection, people still find time to stir the pot. It might be someone talking about your finances, how you spend your money, or what you should be doing with it. Or maybe it's your health, comments about how you don't look well, or assumptions that you're not capable. Sometimes it's as small as a look or a tone, but it's there. You can feel it in the room. That subtle shift when you walk in. That awkward silence when someone realizes you've heard something they didn't want you to hear. And what makes it worse is when people believe these things without even asking you. They don't check in. They don't clarify. They just run with the story that's easiest to believe. Suddenly, you find yourself explaining things you never did, defending choices that were never anyone's business, feeling like a stranger in your own circle. It's exhausting, and it's unfair. But here's what I want you to remember. Gossip is rarely about the person being talked about. It's about the person doing the talking. Their insecurities, their boredom, their need to feel important. So don't let it define you. You don't need to confront every rumor or waste your breath correcting every lie. Speak up if you need to. But know this, silence can also be strength. Especially when it's backed by a life of integrity. You don't need to shout your truth. You only need to live it. Still, there are moments when the gossip gets under your skin, when it makes you doubt yourself, when you start questioning whether maybe, just maybe, there's some truth to what's being said. That's where the real danger lies, not in their words, but in the way those words can creep into your heart. And that brings us to something even more hidden, even more personal, something that few people want to admit: projection. When people see in you something they're afraid to see in themselves, maybe it's your health, your independence, your peace, all things they long for but don't have. And instead of sitting with their longing, they lash out. They may say you're lucky, that it was all easy for you. They'll gloss over the years of effort, the nights you stayed up worrying, the sacrifices you made when no one was looking. All they see now is the outcome. And because it reminds them of what they haven't done or what they've lost, they turn that discomfort into criticism, or sarcasm, or just coldness. It's a hard truth to sit with, that sometimes people hate what they see in you. Not because of you, but because of what it makes them feel about themselves. But once you realize this, something beautiful happens. You stop taking it personally. You stop making their reaction your responsibility. And you begin to protect your peace like it's something sacred. Because it is. You've spent a lifetime earning that peace. You've fought for it, cried for it, built it from the rubble of your hardest seasons. You don't need to apologize for it now. In fact, your job now is to protect it, to guard it from the opinions that don't matter, to nurture it with people who see your worth clearly, not through the lens of their own fears. Because when you do that, you're not just creating peace for yourself, you're showing others that it's possible. That even in a world full of comparison, criticism, and noise, you can still choose joy. You can still live authentically. And you can still shine, quietly, boldly, and unapologetically. There's another weight that creeps in slowly, often unspoken, yet heavy. And it's the lack of empathy. You might not hear it in words, but you feel it in the way people rush past you, in the way your opinion is brushed aside, in the silence when you share something vulnerable and nobody responds, not because they're being cruel, but because they simply don't understand. And that might be the most painful part. The feeling that people don't see your struggles, not your physical ones, not your emotional ones, not the invisible challenges you face each day just to keep moving forward. They don't understand the quiet grief that builds over time, the losses, the changes, the friends who are no longer here. They don't realize how exhausting it is to do the little things they take for granted. getting dressed, making a phone call, walking to the market. They assume slowness means weakness, that your need for reflection means you've lost touch. But what they don't realize is that every step you take is informed by decades of experience. Every hesitation is not confusion, it's wisdom, it's consideration. It's a sign of someone who's learned the value of moving with care. But they don't see that. They only see the surface. And when people only see the surface, they stop connecting. They stop listening. And you're left feeling invisible. Not because you are, but because they haven't learned how to look deeper. Still, here's the truth that keeps your head held high. Empathy can be taught. And you have the power to lead by example. The more you share openly and patiently, even when it's hard, the more you invite understanding. Tell them how it feels when they interrupt, when they dismiss, when they forget that you too need to be heard. You're not demanding pity. You're asking for presence, for connection, for humanity. And sometimes, despite all your kindness, you'll still find people who just don't care to try. That's when you need to turn your attention inward and ask yourself, are these the people I want to invest my energy in? Because the truth is, not everyone deserves full access to your heart. And that brings us to something no one talks about enough: competition. You wouldn't think of rivalry in your later years. After all, haven't we outgrown it? But it doesn't disappear. It just changes form. It becomes subtle, unspoken, a quiet tension that lingers in the air when someone feels they've fallen behind. You may feel it with old friends or even your own siblings. Maybe it's because your retirement looks a little more stable. Maybe you're still traveling while they're dealing with illness. Maybe your children visit often while theirs don't. Whatever the reason, that undercurrent of comparison can slip into your closest relationships, creating resentment where there once was warmth. It's strange how even joy can spark jealousy. Not because you've done something wrong, but because joy reveals where others feel empty. And instead of celebrating your blessings, they start distancing themselves. You'll hear comments like, "Well, not everyone has it so easy." Or, "You're lucky your kids still care." At first you brush it off. But after a while, you start feeling guilty for your happiness. Let me say this clearly. Don't. You've earned the life you have. You don't need to hide your joy to make others comfortable. You can be kind and proud at the same time. You can be compassionate without dimming your light. That balance of grace and truth is what sets you free. If there's competition around you, rise above it with humility, not apology. Acknowledge others' strengths. Offer them encouragement. But never let their need to measure themselves against you rob you of your peace. Life is not a race. It's a garden. And everyone's flowers bloom at different times. Still, sometimes it's not the envy of individuals that weighs us down. It's society itself. The expectations, the rules, the silent messages that tell you how you should behave at a certain age. That tell you to slow down, to be quiet, to stop dreaming, to stop taking up space. These are the chains we don't see, but feel every day. You want to start painting? Someone says, at your age, you want to travel solo? That's not safe. You want to speak your mind? That's inappropriate. And with each comment, each judgment, a little piece of your spirit is told to sit down. But I want you to know something deeply, fully, and without a shadow of a doubt. You do not have to shrink. You are not here to play small. You're here to bloom, no matter the season. Whether you're 60, 70, 80, or beyond, if your heart is beating, your dreams are still alive. And if you want to try something new, speak up, take a risk, start again, do it. Let society watch in silence as you choose joy over rules. Freedom over fear, self-love over social expectations. Because the only permission you ever need is your own. And I know, it's not always easy. Especially when the world seems to have forgotten you. When your calls aren't returned, your stories aren't listened to, your worth isn't acknowledged. That brings us to the final sting, the one that cuts deepest, the feeling of being unrecognized. Like your life's work, your sacrifices, your love, none of it ever really mattered. It happens slowly. You raise children who forget to say thank you. You work tirelessly in your community, but no one remembers your name. You hold your family together through quiet strength, but no one tells you they see it. And the silence becomes louder than any words ever could. But let me tell you something from the heart. You are not invisible. The fact that your recognition hasn't come from outside doesn't mean your impact isn't real. It means the world is distracted. It doesn't mean you're unimportant. Your worth was never supposed to be measured by applause. It was always meant to be felt. Felt in the warmth of a grandchild resting against your shoulder. Felt in the wisdom someone carries because of your stories. Felt in the peace you now live in because of everything you once survived. You are the legacy. You are the gift. You are the quiet force that shaped generations. And you don't need anyone to validate that for it to be true. So here we are, you and I, standing in the truth of all the ways people's discomfort can show up as resentment when we grow older. Not because you've done something wrong, but because growing older with grace, wisdom, and strength unsettles others. It challenges their illusions. It reveals what they're not yet ready to face in themselves. And while that realization can hurt deeply, it can also set you free. Because once you understand that their judgments are not about you, you no longer need to carry them. You no longer need to explain yourself, fix their discomfort, or ask for their approval. You are free to live, really live, in the fullness of who you are. You're allowed to protect your time. You're allowed to walk away from gossip, from shallow friendships, from draining conversations. You're allowed to say no, not today, not anymore. And you're allowed to say yes to the things that light you up even if no one else understands them. What you're not allowed to do, not anymore, is make yourself small so others can feel big. You have lived too much, felt too deeply, and survived too many storms to shrink now. You've been the steady hand, the quiet support, the unsung hero in so many stories. And even if the world forgets that, you must not. Let this next season of your life be one of bold honesty, of gentle boundaries, of unapologetic joy. Wear what makes you feel beautiful. Speak your mind even if your voice shakes. Laugh too loudly. Dance without reason. Start a new hobby. Read books that take you places. Be curious again. Be wild in the quietest, most grounded way. And if someone says, "That's not what people your age should be doing," smile kindly. Then do it anyway. Because you've earned the right to live by your own rules now. You see, we don't get to choose how others feel about us. We can't control their insecurities, their assumptions, or their silence. But we can choose how we show up. We can choose to stop waiting for permission and start giving ourselves what we always needed: respect, joy, freedom, and peace. Maybe the recognition never came. Maybe they didn't say thank you. Maybe they didn't listen when you tried to explain what you carried all these years. That's okay. Say thank you to yourself now. Thank yourself for making it through, for holding on, for showing up every single day, even when no one noticed. Your life is your proof, and that proof is louder than any applause will ever be. Let this be your season of truth. Let this be your season of release. Let this be the time you decide, "I'm done trying to fit into places I've outgrown." You don't owe anyone the old version of you. You don't owe them silence, or softness, or comfort. You owe yourself everything you gave away too easily before: time, attention, self-trust, joy. And if someone finds that intimidating, that's not your burden to carry. Because the most powerful version of you is the one that no longer seeks to be liked, but simply chooses to be real. So, my dear friend, if you felt any of this, envy directed at you, misunderstandings that cut deep, the silence of a world too distracted to honor your presence, please know this: you are not alone. And more than that, you are not wrong for wanting to be seen. Your life still matters. Your story still matters. And the best part? You still have chapters left to write. Not the kind that seek permission, but the kind that break free. The kind that laugh anyway, that create joy where there was once obligation, that stop performing and start being. So I'll ask you this: what would your life look like if you stopped trying to please everyone who doesn't really see you and started living for yourself, fully, fiercely, honestly? Think about it. And when you're ready, take one small step in that direction. Just one. Because that's how it begins. Thank you for spending this time with me. If any of this resonated, I'd love for you to share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what part of your story this brought to mind. Let's remind each other that we're not alone, that we're still growing, still becoming. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps spread these messages to others who need to hear them. And until next time, may you keep walking in the truth of who you are, with grace, with strength, and with the quiet fire of someone who knows their best years aren't behind them. They're happening now. Here's to living your best life at any age.